Oh. Howdy, Salutations, my dear friends. What a delightful evening it is outside, isn't it? Oh, Alexandria, darling, could you please play delightful neighborhood tunes?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes. The tunes. Sorry. I suppose you're winding down for the evening, reflecting on the prior events of the day, or perhaps even the life choices that you've made that have led up to this very point. But what I like to do is to just sit down and read a nice, good book. In video form, because it's the only form of literature that doesn't give me the sudden urge to put a gun in my mouth. And that inevitably leads me to hear about other people's stories about video games. Unfortunately, a lot of these are just older games on older systems that I never played until recently, so I just don't have the same kind of emotional attachment to them as they do. And for a perfect example of this, let's look at this guy. He likes Mario 64, and his name is Nathaniel. You know who else is named Nathaniel? This guy, and he is a notorious car fucker, so yeah, maybe don't judge a book by its sex offender counterpart. But given that I and other Wii fans are now old enough to be nostalgic for it, I decided I'd do one of my own. Yep, I'm one of those guys now. Let's just, hope I'm at least 20 feet away from a car. But never mind any of that, because I have a story of my own. It's a story full of passion, mystery, love, pathological lying, and an underrated 3D platforming classic, Super Mario Galaxy 2. There are very few things in this life that I cherish. Food, water, shelter, the original Xbox port of Half-Life 2, just the basic necessities for human survival. But the one thing I cherish more than any of those things combined is Nintendo. Wow, I just finally realized how incredibly lame that sounds out loud. The first Nintendo game I remember playing was Wii Sports, but I've already dedicated an entire series to that, so maybe you should just check that out. Now, that did introduce me to the Wii, but the game that made me love and embrace it was Super Mario Galaxy 2. And as such, I'll be going over the game with my own little personal perspective of playing the game as a kid, to make it feel more special. So gather around as I regale you with the personal ramblings of a small child. Alright, first off, let's lay down some funky exposition. I first got a Wii in Christmas 2008, and like any other Wii, it came bundled with Wii Sports. I loved that game, and it was the one that introduced me to the Wii. Fast forward to mid-2010, I was around 5 years old at the time. The ones I remember the most were definitely the Wii series and some of the old Lego games, and later on Mario Kart Wii. But one fateful day in the summer of 2010, an angelic video game case-shaped box with 4 simple words was bestowed upon our household: Super Mario Galaxy 2. We had never played the first game, and we couldn't be any happier. Funnily enough, I think a lot of the games we got back then were just sequels to games that we never played, pretty much just because they were usually the shinier ones on the shelf at Target, and those came with a lot more street cred. I played other Mario games like Mario Kart Wii and DS, but I never actually played any of the mainline games, so the day I got Mario Galaxy 2 absolutely changed my life. It was the perfect combination of sights, sounds, colors, and all of it mashed into a conveniently kid-friendly experience. I don't need to tell you the game was good. It's got a 97 on Metacritic and universal praise across the entire internet. I doubt anyone who's heard of it hasn't played it, and even those who don't like it rightfully know its place in video game history. But hey, don't just take my word for it, take millions of other people's words for it. It's called peer pressure, and it's a notoriously easy way to force people into making life-threatening decisions. The magic for me starts with that title screen music, just absolutely blasting me with that early 2010s nostalgia. It's triumphant, breathtaking, and whimsical, and I haven't even pressed a single button yet. Actually, I take that back. The whole soundtrack is an absolute delight. Like the original, it has that live orchestral soundtrack that just sounds gorgeous through and through. Pretty much every track is iconic in their own right, with the even more basic tracks being absolute classics. Puzzle Plank Galaxy, Sky Station Galaxy, Yoshi Star Throwback, Slipsand, all of them. My favorite has to be the various songs that include galactic sounding accents that just complete it. But I suppose I should get into the game's story first. It's nothing too crazy, just another copy and paste. It's nowhere near as good as the original's take on the story, as well as the extra lore they had with Rosalina, but I'll give them a pass considering this was the first time I heard it, so it wasn't nearly as stale to me. It's definitely way more straightforward, practically dropping us right into the first level. Sky Station Galaxy is a great introduction to the game, as well as Mario's controls, which are still just as buttery smooth as I remember them. This is where I first got a feel for the mechanics of the original Mario Galaxy, like using the pointer to collect star bits and using the spin move to attack enemies. The first game did this much better, having them actually play a key part in the story and the lore, but I don't mind the way they did it here. You know, that's weird. It's almost like they were expecting you to play these games chronologically or something. Crazy, I know. It might not be nearly as cohesive, but it still gets the job done. We get a feel for the spherical walking physics, enemies, platforming, a lot of really cool visuals, and even botanical child abuse. We now have our first power star and land on a small meteoroid of some kind. This was my introduction to the game's hub. The captain here is Lubba, a big ol' purple Luma, and of all the good things this game has taught me, the best had to absolutely be proper manners. Surprisingly to those who were familiar with the original, there's basically no mention of Rosalina apart from vague references here and there until the very end of the game. With the power of the stars, the ship is transformed into Starship Mario. This place is basically like a playground with a bunch of things to mess around with. Right now there's not much, but later on as the game progresses, we'll unlock more things. Stepping onto the ship's gas pedal, we are introduced to the world map. They went back to the old 2D level-by-level style of progression, which I have to stress again, I never knew about. As a matter of fact, in some weird way, I'm glad I played Mario Galaxy 2 before any of the others, considering how back to basics this was in comparison to other Mario games by having mechanics and references to previous games. It still managed to surprise me, even if it's something they already did. And on top of that, when I eventually did play the original games 5 years later, yeah, sue me, I was incredibly blown away from all the differences between it and the sequel, to a point where it feels more like this was the sequel. Anywho, back to this map. I always loved the little spinning planetoids that represent each galaxy. Again, it's something from the original, but I still adored them. I remember I would draw out fan-made world maps with my own little planetoids everywhere. They managed to capture the aesthetic of each level before you even enter them. In short, I like little miniatures. That's about it. But what about those levels, huh? Putting the game in space allows for a lot more crazy themes, and coupled with the vibrant and colorful Mario art style, it was incredible to look at. If there was any game to introduce me to 3D platformers, this would have to be the one. I mean, I guess Battle for Bikini Bottom was the one I played before this, but let's just forget about that. Sometimes if I'm in a more open area, I like to just long jump around. It feels fun to traverse, and while exploration isn't really the main theme here, it's still fun to walk around and explore. As for the game's difficulty, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. It's really easy for me because I've played this game so many times that I basically know it like the back of my prostate. It's not a big cakewalk like Mario Odyssey, but there's some stars, especially the Prankster Comets and Hidden Stars, that are absolutely brutal to get, even for a seasoned veteran like myself. More on that later though, as we enter the second level, Yoshi's Star Galaxy. Here we're introduced to one of Super Mario Galaxy 2's big selling points, the ability to play as Yoshi. Well, it would have been, but to me it was more like, hello, unidentified dinosaur creature, fancy being my slave? Yeah, it's more than you think. Now you not only use the pointer to collect star bits and other such uses, you can use it as Yoshi's tongue to eat enemies, fruit, and tongue lash these flower wheels in various platforming segments. He plays a part in some of the major sections of the game, but then like there's other times where he just feels forced in. It's never too bad, usually in just some one-off stages, but it's nowhere near as bad as any of the other gimmicks I've seen in my life. Now that we have more levels to access, let's take some time to really get to appreciate the world map. This simple presentation might throw some people off, but what I really like here is the music, and those backdrops are absolutely gorgeous. It's not just about how they look, but how they fit into the game's story. Like, as you get closer to Bowser's home base, the journey is signified by the backgrounds of each world. World 1 is a blue sky with some clouds and birds, signifying that you're still on Earth, or this universe's equivalent of Earth. World 2 takes place just outside of the solar system, showing that you are definitely in space now. World 3 is set in deep space with an asteroid belt passing by. By the time you reach World 4, it's clear that you're in some unknown region of the galaxy, which is also accented by the mysterious ethereal music in the background. World 5 is meant to signify the various wormholes Bowser's been opening up with the power power stars and planting some of his armies there. And then finally World 6, which is just a massive swirling vortex of destruction, clearly signifying this is where Bowser's been for a while. It's small details like that that I never noticed as a kid, so seeing that now is incredible. But hey, let's highlight some of the boss battles we've come across. There's the previously mentioned Pee-wee Piranha, which, you know, botanical child abuse and all, but there's also the King Lakitu in Yoshi's Star Galaxy, who honestly I find really annoying. He moves way too damn fast for only the second boss. Over in Spin Dig Galaxy, we find the first of Mario's many power-ups with the Spin Drill. It is definitely gimmicky in the way that you can only use it in certain places, but I think it's a much better power-up than what Mario Galaxy 1 had with the Spring Mushroom. The boss here is Dig-a-Leg, who clearly is just another small, scaled-down version of Mega Leg, which might make it look inferior, but beating the smaller version first made the real Mega Leg that much more impactful to me. Flip Swap Galaxy is the first of many bonus levels that you can unlock through the Hungry Lumas. Basically, feed it as many star bits as possible to unlock extra levels. I'm pointing this one out because this is where we first see the flip switches, a very common mechanic that would show up in a lot of the later Mario games, but I think it works the best in this game specifically. I say that because it doesn't just activate when you jump, but you also have to shake the Wii Remote, requiring a lot more strategy to how you play. Right side down Galaxy's whatever to me, especially considering the Fire Flower is timed. Okay, but Fluffy Bluff Galaxy is a great level. It's beautiful just like any of the others and has one of the best tracks in the entire game. Not that that's a hard thing to do, but the most important thing it does is introduce the Cloud Flower, probably one of the greatest power-ups since the Fire Flower. It's just so ingenious how they make it work with the simplicity of the Wiimote's motion controls. You do the Wii Sports Classic, swinging the Wii Remote to create a little cloud that you can use as a platform to walk on. You can use it to reach much higher places or traverse further distances. This allows for a lot more exploration, like hidden items or secret missions where you can access them with the Cloud Flower. But come on, the real reason is that it's just really fucking fun to use. It can be a little overpowered in some levels, practically allowing you to bypass certain areas if you know how to use it correctly, but Fluffy Bluff is also where we meet my main man, the Chimp. This sly little bugger is just incredible. He's one of the many one-off Mario characters that people either seem to love or hate. Maybe his cocky attitude doesn't exactly work here, considering I incinerate his scores in every challenge, but I'm just gonna let him live in his little dream world. Now we approach our first boss over in Bowser Jr.'s Fiery Flotilla. For the rest of the game, Bowser Jr.'s bosses are all robots or mechanical things and such, but for some reason this is the only exception. Here he has a dragon snake pet named Gobblegut with these stomach ulcers that you have to explode, which, I mean, I get it's the bad guy and everything, but that just sounds absolutely horrific. That's like 6 different cases of appendicitis. I cannot even begin to imagine how he hasn't passed out from the pain. With that momentary lapse in judgment, we grab our first Grand Star, sending us to World 2. Man, I always get chills every time I hear that theme. It's just, I don't know. It could be nostalgia, but it's also just pretty damn cool. What always confused me was that World 1 and World 2 had the same world map theme. Granted, World 1's theme changes much later on in the game, but it was always kind of jarring to me. The first level here is Puzzle Plank Galaxy, which is just incredibly memorable for its kind of wooden block DIY motif. I mean, also that really fucking scary stink bug guy, but, you know, let's just forget about that. And of course, that track is just incredibly catchy. It's not, like, as intense, but it's fun and catchy, and that's what really matters in a Mario game. We get another power-up courtesy of Boulder Bowl Galaxy, one of the more recognizable levels. It was the level that introduced me to the Rock Mushroom, which is honestly pretty hit or miss to me. You have very little control over the steering, so most of the time I end up crashing into something I didn't want to, or I just careen myself directly off the stage and into my death. There's some parts of the game where it works, but it was never all that great to me. Speaking of uncontrollable power-ups, let's hit up Hightail Falls Galaxy. It's got this sick remix of Mario World's athletic theme, but it also introduces the first power-up for Yoshi. Now, the theme with all of his power-ups is that they're all some kind of food or fruit. The Dash Pepper turns Yoshi into Dash Yoshi, and if I really had to explain to you what that means, then is there really any hope for you? Again, it's one of those power-ups where it's really hard to control them, and luckily this is one of the few stages where it actually works pretty well in your favor. It's designed with all these vertical platforms and different curves you run around on, and I think that's pretty cool level design right there, even if it does look a little bare. Wild Glide Galaxy is kind of like this game's version of those Stingray challenges from the first. You control Fluzzard here by tilting the Wii Remote around, actually a lot like the Island Flyover game from Wii Sports Resort. It's a nice break from the main stages with the music and the atmosphere. Sure, it's definitely a gimmick, but not one that overstays its welcome. Back on Starship Mario, we got the Mail Toad now. We got the generic Peach letter with some attached one-ups that I'm so desperate for right now. But another thing I liked about the Mail Toad were the letters that activated secret missions. Secret stars are basically just stars that are hidden in one of the level's missions, ranging from hidden passageways to feeding these Luma coins to create another planet to just being right the fuck there. Yeah, surprisingly not all of them are winners. However, some of these stars can only be found after getting a letter from the Mail Toad at a certain point in the game. Someone will bark up your tree asking for a favor or two, but oh my god, the chimp himself has just challenged me to a stomp challenge over in Fluffy Bluff Galaxy. What a formidable challenge that I absolutely destroyed him in. You did well enough, monkey. World 2's got some other neat nature-themed levels, such as with Cosmic Cove Galaxy, which is probably one of the contenders for best level in the whole game, and I say that on many points. Graphically, it looks just as good as the others, but I particularly like the bright and colorful beach aesthetic. However, the music just has to be my favorite in the whole game. I mentioned it earlier, but it's just so elegant and beautiful, having both harp and various synth effects to give off an ethereal vibe. I know I've said that a million times, but it's the only way I can truly describe it. The level itself isn't half bad either. I always love that part where you press the big button that freezes over the entire level, where you then wall jump up these frozen waterfalls to get to the star. It's just so cool, pun entirely intended. Now we get to the second bonus level, Honey Bloom Galaxy. Here we're introduced to the bee mushroom from the original game, but remember that this is an entirely optional level, and depending on how diligent you are with collecting star bits, you may never even notice that. Later on in World 4, the bee mushroom appears again in Honey Hop Galaxy, which creates this weird divide of people who either found it first in Honey Bloom Galaxy or those who found it in Honey Hop Galaxy. Now, I'm not one to participate in political debates, but if you unlocked it there, that's totally fine. All I ask is that you wrap your bare genitals in razor wire, which is a perfectly acceptable compromise. Regardless of bodily mutilation and whatnot, there's the first Bowser boss level. It's got a nice remix of the Bowser's Road theme from Mario 64, and honestly, I just always preferred this rendition. What? Your console from 1996 has worse sound capabilities than a console from 10 years later through no fault of its own? What despicable lies you come up with. I never really liked the lava aesthetic. It just never interested me, so I got really tired of it, and after coming back to it now, I feel no different. The Bowser fights always kind of have the same formula. Dodge the lasers, fire, and then wait for him to summon these giant glowing rock balls that don't really benefit him that much in the first place, so I don't see why he does this, and you know, you just smack him in the face, or sometimes the pelvis. Also, I always wondered, does he like to eat those stars because he's either got an iron gut to the 10th degree, or that is some major league indigestion? Alright, so I just looked up what happens when you eat a star, and I got a link to this weird-ass article about people doing a new food trend where they eat sunlight for sustenance like a plant, so I guess Bowser's like a flower, I guess. Coming into World 3, we have that great backdrop, but more importantly, one of the better map themes of the game. There's just something so elegant about that piano. It's like a space opera or something you would listen to while looking at the lake in space. Unfortunately, in terms of levels, it's pretty forgettable. Don't get me wrong, they're alright, but in the game with a lot of amazing and memorable levels, it really sticks out. You'll see what I mean later on. In the meantime, we have a split path, and I choose to head to Tall Trunk Galaxy. The first mission revolves around the Blimp Fruit, the second Yoshi power-up. In what should be pretty self-explanatory, it turns him into a balloon, which I am sure a lot of a certain population of people are very happy with. Apologies in advance, but I just don't like it. You move very slowly, you don't have much in terms of mobility, and it just feels more like a patience test. I much preferred the second mission, a nice little slide level being a nice homage to Mario 64. I mean, I guess I didn't know that existed yet, so it was just, you know, another slide level. Also, it has this cool little race of tree people. This game has a lot of weird one-off characters that are just kind of there, and I wish they went in a little more with their personalities. And I know Mario's not about the story or the characters, but it wouldn't kill them to add a little bit of character. Cloudy Court Galaxy is just like a slightly altered version of Fluffy Bluff Galaxy with a lot more of that classic windmill aesthetic that one's never appreciated enough. It's got memorable moments here and there, but overall it's just more cloud flower platforming shenanigans, and that's all I need. But the reason I mention it at all is because for some inexplicable reason, whenever you finish the level, you unlock the Prankster Comets. It's another thing from the original, but it's played out a lot differently here. In every single galaxy Galaxy, there's a comet medal that you can collect. They're usually somewhere hidden, and after collecting them, you can access their respective prankster comet. They're challenging alternate versions of the stages they're in, like setting time limits, daredevil runs where you only have 1 health, or other changes like the purple coin speedruns. This is where I met those shadow clones, and I've been terrified of them ever since. Just their color is enough to scare me. And before you ask, yes, it is a race thing. You can love or hate them depending on how you feel about side content in general, but most of them were generally fun enough for me to not really think about it. The next few levels are somewhat forgettable too. Haunty Hall's Galaxy is just your generic ghost house level in space. I do like the theme of different optical illusions. It's definitely a unique concept that offers various platforming challenges within. Some, though, feel incredibly forced. Take the ball berry, for instance. It's the 3rd Yoshi power-up, and when you eat it, it makes certain platforms visible for a little bit. And honestly, they really don't do much with it. Like, some different platforms would have made it a little more interesting, but shockingly, it's really easy to entice a toddler with jingling keys. On the other hand, Freezy Flake Galaxy is a graphical representation of jingling keys. I just think it's such a charming level. It has a Christmassy remix of the main overture. The snowball mechanic is something I like a lot here, and using the fire flower to kind of contrast that works very well in its favor. Bro, even the chimp returns for wacky ice skating minigame antics. The most memorable part is in the 2nd mission, but almost entirely because of how off-color and unsettling it was. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the tension they build towards the middle of the level with this section on a bridge that's just absolutely hammered by a blizzard so you can't see anything. Or maybe it's when you make your way to this small planetoid that seems to have nothing but a little sling star on it, but when you finally get down to the boss arena, it's revealed that the planet you just walked on is this terrifying, shit-your-pants, scary, clown-faced, spiky rock snowball monster. Its demented laughter and those weird contorted faces it made was just another bookmark in my history of childhood nightmare fuel, right next to that face guy from Nick Jr. Trust me, behind those eyes, he's plotting something, and it's not good. Rolling Masterpiece Galaxy introduced me to that rolling ball mechanic where you tilt the Wii Remote to guide this ball to the end. I think the level design is creative, and although the controls can be a little finicky sometimes on top of the whole art class theme not doing much for me, it's fine for what it is, just another side level. World 3's bonus level, Beat Block Galaxy, has a pretty basic gimmick. These blocks will disappear and reappear in tune to the Super Mario Bros. Underground theme. I found it entertaining, but the one thing that really annoyed me was that ticking sound that would play out of the Wii Remote speaker. It acts as an indicator for when the blocks would switch places, but it was always out of sync with the song and game, so it would just always throw me off. I like this game, right? But all that pales in comparison to the next Bowser Jr. boss stage. This time around, it heavily revolves around Yoshi, utilizing his tongue to eat bullet bills, which he can then spit back out like an RPG. It's a pretty creative and neat way to use Yoshi, and begs yet another question as to how these guys can eat very dangerous explosives. But Mega Hammer is an absolutely boss. Using Yoshi, you again eat the bullet bills and absolutely shatter the glass titties of doom. There's kind of a lot going on. You gotta dodge lasers, and of course the hammer hits every time I try to shoot at him, and then he has his fists up, and then he accidentally destroys it without fail. But the second phase was almost impossible to beat, mostly because of my own incompetence. By then his head is exposed, and I somehow didn't have the logical reasoning to see that I was supposed to hit him when the glass thing is right in front of my face. Of course, I soon realized my dumbassery and that yes, you can shoot the thing in the head. Nowadays, it's my favorite boss of the game, not just because of how well it integrates Yoshi in a way that isn't overly gimmicky, but also the boss theme is incredible. The first part's got that wacky, unhinged Bowser Jr. style to it, but then it really kicks off and turns into this really epic fighting theme once you really start making some damage. In a series that isn't exactly known for anything substantial or dramatic, it sticks out in the best way possible. After nabbing that 3rd Grand Star and heading off to World 4, this is probably a very unique world to say the least. I think the theme's supposed to be like this mysterious corner of the galaxy, basically like the Bermuda Triangle or something, with the music kind of giving off this whimsical edge, like you're taking on the perspective of a curious child. Yes, I am aware that is definitely overanalyzing it, but there's just something that fits so well with that theme of a mysterious foreign planet. And of course, in video game speak, foreign planet is just code for Gimmick Central. Now, that isn't an entirely bad thing here. Each level's respective gimmick never wears off its welcome too quickly. Take Supermassive Galaxy, for instance. It's just your basic-ass Mario level, but everything's gigantic. Nice, double reference. Alright, now, I'm gonna give you guys a difficult quandary to solve. Try and keep up. What do you think the theme of Flipsville Galaxy is? Time's up, and that's right, it's fat phobia, the funniest form of discrimination. I like the spin drill mission a little better because I think it focuses more on 2D progression than Spin Dig Galaxy. Like I mentioned, Honey Hop is just a clone of Honey Bloom Galaxy, but for cowards who despise innovation. It does stand apart at least a little, with its main focus being somewhat open areas as opposed to the former being mostly 2D. Oh, and also they literally just copied and pasted that one part with the Queen Bee, and yes, it is absolutely as fetishy as the original, so no worries there. Chompworks Galaxy is such a neat idea, just basically like a factory where all the chain chomps are made. I don't know what it is with factory levels, but I just like them all by default. Oh, and you also get these weird robot guys following you around and constantly bitching about your life's endeavors. My favorite part is the end, where you guide this gold chomp to the end. It's incredibly simple, but as a kid, I just felt so accomplished after it, so I always have fond memories. Addressing the spring-shaped abomination in the room, I never thought the spring mushroom was that bad. Yes, it's clunky and just kind of a waste considering you never really needed it, just some basic parkour and gets the job done. You know, I take that back, that was really bad. Purely for its aesthetics, I love Starshine Beach Galaxy. Beaches are my favorite, and the brightly colored Mario palette makes it look even better, but there's so much more too. It's the most open level of the game, with Yoshi playing a pretty big part of it, including the graphic abuse under the Lakitus. Hell, even the Piantas from Mario Sunshine are back, but I guess I'd never heard of that, so I just usually called them the fuck are those things and how do they breathe. There's a neat underwater section where you traverse through caves and across this thing, which I usually just refer to as I just peed myself. Now for the arguably very fitting bonus stage, Sweet Mystery Galaxy. This is basically exactly what I was talking about earlier with the Bulbberry. Now it's the main focus and absolutely nothing's changed. The design is fine and all, but just kind of whatever to me. But as an American, I of course have to appreciate the candy theme here. And there you go, European viewers. I hope you're happy. Maybe you can stop spelling colors with a U like a madman. Bowser's next stage has you running across gravity-shifting platforms and whirly-twirly circles. What a treat. For some reason, Bowser's surprised to see us here, regardless of the fact that all of his castles are consistently guarded by turtles and sentient slabs of rock. But I digress. He's got lasers now, so, watch out for that, I guess. Yes, Bowser, I'm sure your plan's coming along just great. Your roadblocks sure are effective. But never mind that, because we enter my favorite world from at least a thematic view. World 5 plays directly into the progression of the story more than any of the other worlds. It's all in the layout. You have the first level, Space Storm Galaxy, which is thematically set up as maybe some kind of defense satellite meant to inform Bowser on your progress. After beating it, you're able to go down a pipe and unlock the rest of the levels off the bat. With the way they're presented on the map, it almost looks like they're meant to represent a series of defense bases to stop Mario. Most of them don't really fit that theme, like, at all, apart from the bonus level, but I'm pretty certain it was set up this way on purpose. But hey, even if I'm talking out of my ass, it's still pretty damn cool to figure out. For the very little storytelling we have here, it makes something incredibly foreboding like that fucking awesome. Speaking of Space Storm, the music in this level just absolutely pushes that tense atmosphere. The escalation of the stakes at play are exemplified through the environment too. The rain and the cold, dark metal aesthetic really drive it home for me. The second mission revolves around climbing to the top of a tower with this somewhat interesting mechanic of a button that slows down time. Not that I need it or anything, but hey, there's also the Bowie Bass Galaxy theme, the badassiest badass soundtrack of all video game kick-assery combined. But don't get me wrong, the rest of the levels are also quite good, except for Upside Dizzy Galaxy. Not only is it a copy-paste of Right Side Down Galaxy, but the hidden star in this level was always complete bullshit. Especially when that fucking robot starts up their shit again, I cannot. Slip Sand Galaxy is honestly a pretty alright sand level. The aesthetics never really been for me, but I sure as hell remember Squizzer, the big sand dinosaur. Look how wacky his face is, let's burn it. I prefer Boo Moon Galaxy over Haunty Halls because while it has its basic ghost theme, there's a lot more to it instead of just some floating platforms. Obviously, there's a maze section, a bog, the moon, this neat pop-up book section, and in the second level, the big house. This is where we come across the Boo Mushroom, which turns Mario into a ghost. He can fly and go through walls, and he's slow as shit, but I really like his design. It's kind of what Mario Odyssey ended up doing. Alright, I'm gonna need the audience to gather around for this little tale. Once upon a time, there was an internet rumor that shed light on a disturbing and scary secret. The tale is that in the forbidden hellscape that is Shiverburn Galaxy, there lays a mystical force of some kind, one that constantly gazes upon its travelers and instills a sense of fear and mistrust to all who dare encounter it. It's said to be the scariest Nintendo secret of all time. So I decided to sacrifice my mortal soul and plunge into the endless madness and see it for myself.
Yeah, so they're just JPEGs. JPEGs that help bring the atmosphere of this level together because I love it a lot. The combination of both fire and ice in a game is basically a cliche now, but at least here it's pulled off in interesting and fun ways. They got everything here. Disturbing bystanders, giant Octumba guys, and even the chimp rented out a place here. Oh, you sleazeball. In terms of thematic levels, Fleet Glide Galaxy also does a stellar job at that. It's basically just a harder Wild Glide Galaxy with Fluzzard returning, but the theming is just so cool, I can't possibly ignore it. Instead of being a relaxing naturescape, it's really intense with blargs, bonsai bills, and a triumphant backtrack to piece it all together. Combining that with the cold metallic theme of the ship you're on, it fits incredibly well with the theming of World 5. And for being a clone, it's really damn good. Afterwards, I decided to take a break and look at the secret missions I was talking about earlier, like the Chimp Stomp Challenge on Honey Hop Galaxy, or racing with these other birds on the Fluzzard levels. However, I failed to mention two other missions. These two Guillermos are collectors, and as such, they ask you to find enemies for them. It is really hard to walk these guys when they're always being crushed to death or falling into the endless void of space. I would be a terrible dog walker. But hey, at least their colors are cool. They'll make great additions to my party. That sucks, but you don't really want to be a bother, so you just stay on anyways without realizing it was a trap that I made up all along in order to kidnap people for my new country I call Ryclopulus. But again, the theming of World 5 ends with our final Bowser Jr. level, Bowser Jr.'s Boomsday Machine. It actually picks up directly after the last one with us landing to what remains of Mega Hammer. It kind of paints the picture that Jr. used this cannon to flee and start up somewhere else. It's a bunch of metallic-themed enemy gauntlets and Cloudflower platforming right next to the damn sun. The main level's great on its own, but when we finally get to the Boomsday Machine itself, that's where it really picks up. We're faced with this giant tower that actually uses the power of the sun to shoot at you. The Cloudflower parts are honestly whatever, since it's just going straight up, but my favorite parts are the design of the machine itself. It just looks cool with all the fire and moving parts. That track, though, is just a pumped-up remix of his usual theme, but it's just so impactful, especially when the machine gains wheels and the track pumps up even more. It made a pretty mundane fight that much cooler. Overall, World 5 hits it out of the park at keeping continuity within the story to symbolize we're about to reach the end. And as if right on cue, we approach World 6, the final world. It still gives me chills even now. Imagine a literal black hole vortex basically showing us where Bowser is sucking up the other galaxies for power stars. The background music has a vibe I can only describe as an ominous serenity. The calm before the storm, a moment where you can catch your breath to prepare for the final showdown that's about to take place. It's a perfect payoff to the tension World 5 was building, a display of absolute chaos and uncertainty. And of course, the best way to relax is to run around nearly dodging multiple lava dragons and near misses with absolutely excruciatingly painful death. But hey, why don't you just take a break? The chimp's got a bowling challenge you can try out. That's not terrible. Melty Molten Galaxy also has this kind of challenge with the rock mushroom. It's not much to write home about, but it's alright. World 6 has got the most variety of any of the other main worlds, mostly because they're all unique in some aspect, like Clockwork Ruins Galaxy, which is like this big Temple of Doom themed level with several puzzles. It's not my favorite considering how punishing death is here, but the music and platforming make up for it tenfold. Surprisingly, in the middle here, we have Throwback Galaxy, a nearly one-to-one remake of Whomp's Fortress from Mario 64. This is another example of how I'm glad I played this game first, because by the time I played Mario 64, I found that game's aesthetic of this level incredibly charming. Luckily, even for older fans, there's a lot here. The layout's pretty much the same here, but there's different things to do, like the usual Mario Galaxy mechanics, but look at this. When you talk to the Red Babam here, not only is he the one from the original, but he even recognizes you from so long ago, and that's just so heartwarming. The music's gotten a jazzy remix, and lastly, when you reach the top, you're met with a regular Whomp, which after defeating opens a floor panel, where you fall to the bottom half of the stage and you're met with slightly bigger Whomp King. It doesn't shake up things that much, but it's nice to see a not really callback that's also really fun to play for newbies like me. Battle Belt Galaxy is just a huge enemy gauntlet, and that's about it. I like some of the designs and the returning enemies, and especially the last part with the metal chomps, but that's kinda all it does. No, wait. Actually, if you do the secret star where you feed this Luma some coins, you access an alternative boss, a fired up version of Gobblegut. Yeah, honestly, very justified. Like, we brutally murdered him, then he gets sent to space hell? I'd be pissed too. This is the difficulty I was looking for. The only changes are that you can't touch his body and now he creates pools of lava, but that makes it so much harder in a battle where you have to touch him. Plus his design is just so goddamn cool. World 6, unlike the rest, has 2 bonus levels. The first one is Flash Black Galaxy. It's similar to Beat Block from World 3, except now every other beat lights up the stage until it goes back to total darkness. Like Fiery Gobblegut, this is a way cooler use of that mechanic, and at least from a visual standpoint. But the second one is probably the best. After beating Flash Black Galaxy, you unlock Slimy Spring Galaxy. This is basically a dingy cave surrounded by creepy underwater creatures and algae, almost like an abandoned sewer. But there's so much more to it. The soundtrack gives off an incredible sense of loneliness and mysterious eeriness. It's almost like an allegory for depression or isolation. It even plays into the level narrative. So you start in a cave and fall down a well into the caverns. As you careen your way through the water and defeat enemies, the music makes it feel like it's building up to something bigger, not literally, but more emotionally. You pass by what are obviously man-made structures, leading you to wonder what could possibly have happened to this place to leave it in the state it's in now. It gives you a little time to breathe, more or less, before returning you to the damp moss and algae-laden cavern once more. There's a little speed section where you pass by Booze, possibly the spirits of the lives who were lost down here, which is also corroborated by the empty Koopa shells. It could be an allusion to your current mental state, perpetually trying to escape the dank wastelands dirtied by the events that transpired here. But finally, you reach the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel as the music slowly fades, and now you can hear the faint sound of the ocean alongside the chirping of birds as the evening sun blinds you with peace and the reminder that your suffering has ceased. Nothing but a singular treasure chest lays before you, the compensation for the anguishing trials of life and living itself. You're finally at rest. Then, of course, the immersion is immediately broken when Captain Dipshit pops out of the treasure chest as he was apparently trying to scour the place for a star. Never change, old friend. And last but not least, the big bad final boss. You can tell by the obviously ominous giant floating Bowser head because this man has no chill. The cutscene leading up to it gave me chills of excitement from how epic it all felt. It's the perfect family-friendly climactic moment to really keep the kids on edge with such intense narrative tension. Will Mario win? I have no fucking clue. This was my first go at it. How was I supposed to know? This level was always perfect to me. It combines all the previous mechanics that you've been taught so far. Even the lame ones, like the floaty fluff and spin drill, are here for further enjoyment. But the cloud flower part is pretty cool, almost entirely because it makes me look like a badass. The Yoshi section, though, is the absolute bomb. That part where you're running between the 2 lava walls and they're just about to crush you, then the blar comes out of nowhere and you barely make it out unscathed, and even when you leave, Yoshi waves goodbye to you like your lifelong friend, and that's just absolutely way too much emotion for me. We made it past Bowser's devious obstacles, and we're about to take on the Koopa King himself. Again. But this time he breathes fire, so now you gotta dodge lasers, fire, different types of lasers, and the big glowing rock balls. My God. So we knock him dead, but considering this twisted overlord has so many things up his sleeves, nothing could prepare me for what's coming next. Imagine my shock when I learned that as soon as you try to grab the final Grand Star, Bowser rises from the lava, quickly grabs the Grand Star, and holy fuck, he's gone total plant now. Now we're in the chaotic purple dimension where we chuck rocks at him again and he disintegrates into space dust now. And thus, a question more important than the meaning of life and the creation of our existence itself comes to a close. Did Mario win? He sure did. I felt so accomplished, like I took on the impossible and won. You know, suffice it to say, that wasn't exactly how it went down, but my self-esteem was very well established by that point. For the first time, I saved the princess. I know I'm gushing about it, but even the credits were so cool to me. Walking around little snippets from the game is something that I wish was in more games, like a scrapbook of your achievements. But as if the tables couldn't be turned anymore, I discovered the other half of the game. Oh yeah, even after all of that, I was nowhere near done. And obviously this game was too perfect to be left incomplete, so I just had to finish it 7 years later. Look, that was around the time I got a 3DS, and I'd be damned if anything was gonna stop me from that journey. But when I inevitably downloaded the Virtual Console version on my Wii U, I was ready to finish something that I had started oh so long ago. I mean, I guess when I recorded it, I immediately went back into the game, but
That doesn't sound nearly as cool, right?
The first stop of the home stretch is in a brand new world, World S. This was the first of my many special worlds. It's basically where all of the bonus levels are. Frankly, it should just be not so subtle callback world, but hey, it's all new to me. But seriously, look at these. One of them's the Mario section from Galaxy 1's Toy Time Galaxy, another's the Prankster Comet from Beach Bowl, and even a reference to the bonus levels from Mario Sunshine. And I'm very glad that I discovered that it at least had some good level design, but just really shitty physics. There are a few original levels, though. Rolling Coaster Galaxy is a much more difficult Rolling Masterpiece Galaxy, which honestly makes me want an even more difficult ball stage. My favorite is Boss Blitz Galaxy. It's an entire compilation of the various bosses from the original Mario Galaxy. And as I really liked the bosses, it was challenging but so fun to play through. I saw Pee-wee Piranha's older brother, that scary mole guy, that lava squid, but honestly, I was always more intrigued by the shiny platform it was on. I think I might have untreated ADHD. Like everything else today, it really introduced me to these previous bosses. Hell, even Dino Piranha has a fiery counterpart. It's hard enough in the regular mission, but the Prankster Comet's Daredevil run makes it impossible. But, you know, again, it's very satisfying to beat. Now, what could the final bonus level possibly be? A battle of epic and unforeseen proportions? No, you idiot, it's an alternate reality version of Flip Swap Galaxy, where instead of flipping horizontal platforms, you shake the Wii remote to push out these wall columns. It is another cool level. The twist on the flip switch mechanic really spices it up for me, but seemingly that's the last playable level, but we're still not done yet. Throughout this revisit, I've been collecting every power star in order to unlock the real ending of the game. It's a hell of a chore, but once you've done it, some mysterious green Lumas appear on your ship telling you about the Cosmic Jewels. In order to make the Cosmic Jewels appear, you just gotta defeat Bowser again, which, you know, is really dumb, but whatever, fuck it. After beating the main story, you unlock Luigi, so we might as well let him believe in the illusion of free will. There you go, have your 10 seconds of importance. Now, back in the hole of infinite obscurity, this time around we get a new cutscene in Rosalina's library where it's revealed that the entirety of the game was just a story told from her perspective. Sure, that was somewhat obvious from the beginning and the end of the main campaign, but that reveal shocked me. I really don't know why, because this was clearly just their narrative justification for having a sequel. There are so many theories about it, like how at the end of the first game a new universe is created, and so this game takes place in that dimension? And whatever, Mario games never really have this kind of continuity, so that's pretty cool. But never mind that, because when opening the game again, a green comet appears over the Grand World map, spreading the cosmic jewels across the galaxy. These are the green stars. So we just got 120 regular stars, but now there's 120 green stars. I'm sure most people would nope the fuck out at this point, but I must persevere. So what do they even do? Basically, every galaxy now has several green stars to collect. It's like a big hide-and-seek match with the stars hidden in places of various difficulties, from right the fuck there to basically invisible unless you're some asshole who knows these levels top to bottom. They make it a little easier with each star making a distinct sparkling sound when you're near them. This is by far my least favorite part of the game. It's just as much, if not more, of a chore to find them, and I swear I'm gonna hear that sparkly sound every night for the rest of my life. Getting the normal stars puts a little silver crown on the level, but getting all the green stars puts a golden crown on them. And there's nothing more rewarding than having the shiniest game completion tactics available. So about 6 hours of non-stop collecting later, and I was about ready to kill myself, but then finally, we've unlocked the real Final Galaxy Grandmaster Galaxy. It's the usual end of Mario game difficult level, and it's my kind of difficulty, but it was pretty short. All things considered, I guess I'm just that good. But the real last mission is in the level's Prankster Comet, the perfect run. It requires you to beat the entire level without taking any damage. Something that sounds easy at first, but with death after death after death, it will break you. There's so much to avoid. Getting through this air segment with Yoshi, dodging lasers while pushing buttons, navigating flip switches with enemies constantly shooting at you, and these ring beamers sending waves of lasers, and not to mention using pole stars to avoid even more impossible lasers. And even after all of that, you still have to annihilate an entire army of Hammer and Boomerang brothers, all of which will be attacking you at the same time. Your only hope is to not only dodge them all, but immediately spin attack them when they take a break. I had to do this section so many times over to get it right. It is by far one of the hardest levels Nintendo has ever put into a Mario game. But just as I was about to lose hope, I did it. A launch star appears and you're taken to what other than Gateway Galaxy, the tutorial stage from the original game. Rosalina appears to congratulate you, and she later appears on the ship. And with one last look upon the beautiful skies of World S, that was Super Mario Galaxy 2. An absolute masterpiece containing the greatest level design, mechanics, music, gameplay, controls, atmosphere, and any other possible possible aspect of a game of all time. But even if that weren't the case, I'd still love it, because at the end of the day, it's not about the game itself, it's about the wonderful memories and life choices I made because of it. Mario Galaxy 2 made me love Nintendo and everything they had to offer, and out of my love for it, I got the 3DS with even more cool games I experienced. By the time I got the Wii U in 2015, I was a well-established fan, and eventually I started making videos about all of the Nintendo games I love to play purely out of my passion for these games.
Which leads me to where I am today. It's not just about the game, it's about the memories I made while playing it and all the things that have come from that. Because if this one thing can lead me to do all the things that I do and convince you people to watch me rant about video games that no one even cares about for 20 minutes on end, then I think that's a beautiful thing and why I wanted to talk about it so much. And as much as I appreciate the game for inspiring me in the first place, what really inspires me to go on, to move, to give me motivation is you guys. And so you know what? Fuck Mario Galaxy 2. Here's to you guys and all the appreciation you showed over the years. Thanks, guys.